week 2 of the mini cut or shred, whichever you want to call it, is almost over. And today we've got a big video planned for you guys. Going to be doing a full day of eating, going through exactly what it says on the tin, everything I'm eating, why I'm structuring my food a certain way to benefit my gym performance and my results in my mini cut, but also how you can structure up your own diets and fat loss phases for yourself. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and let's get cracking. But before I get into any of that, it's time to absolutely beast my in-person clients. So that is the first stint of my client's finish this morning. Helen actually smashed it on her lying single leg curls. She's just transitioning back from that time away, so it's a little bit of a more of a reduced weight session. So it's not always about going balls to wall on every single session. If a client comes in and not really feeling it, then they're not going to be pushed as hard as we normally push, kind of keeping some energy back, recovering a little bit more so that we can put our all into those sets as best you can. Over time, once next week, she'll probably be much better in terms of energy. So we'll be able to push it much harder and absolutely smash it. Tom smashed it in his lat pull downs. He is currently very, very lean at the moment. So we're doing more intensity-based training, which I'll actually be going through in my training day vlog. So I won't elaborate too much on it, but we're basically doing a lot more higher weight stuff to help with his recovery while he's kind of finishing off his shred at the moment for his holiday. And then we're going to be transitioning into a gaining phase soon, which I'm really excited for because it's looking really, really good at the moment. So into meal 1, we've got the Povo Audi Rosa, which actually is really good. On my Instagram, I rated it an 8 out of 7. The Monster Ultra original sugar-free ones, top dog. As you know from my last vlog, very, very good flavor. And in my meal 1, we've got 500 grams of Greek yogurt, 1 whole apple, Galia apple, if that's how you pronounce it. We've got 30 grams of dark chocolate and 70 grams of granola. Now, this is going to be my pre-workout meal for my pool session in 2 hours time, which isn't ideal, but it's the only time I've got to eat food at the moment with team clients. And once I've done that, it's a haircut, hit the gym for a pool day, and I'll take you along. Just finished all of my morning clients for today, or afternoon clients. James killed it on his deadlifts, doing an 80 kilo deadlift with no bout this time, as we did forget to bring it downstairs, but ended up actually working out better. Sometimes I find deadlifts as well with, like, if you are using the belt, sometimes you get a bit in the way when you're trying to brace your core. It's a good way to kind of learn how to brace to start off with, and then you can kind of take it off. But yeah, 80 kilos for a set of 3 sets of 8, which is good. So we're going to go heavier next week. And then Andy getting absolutely obliterated on split squats. He's currently got an imbalance in his leg. So on his left-hand side, his quad's smaller than his right. So we're looking at ways of, bringing up that imbalance by doing a lot more single leg stuff. So we're doing a cable leg extension, places a lot more weight in the stretch than a normal leg extension would. And also doing, obviously, split squats, 2 sets on the stronger side, 3 on the weaker side. And then we're also looking at things like his habits around how he sits in the day. So he's a teacher, sits cross-legged. So often he'll put his weaker leg underneath, so it's getting compacted quite a lot throughout the day. So this could also be a reason why he's potentially got a little bit of an imbalance. Now, before I head to the gym, I'm gonna go through how to set up your own calories for a fat loss phase. Now, when it comes to fat loss, the first 2 things that we do with setting up clients for achieving a fat loss or a shredded result is look at these 2 things to start off with, okay? So you've got your calories to work out. And one of the most important things that a lot of times people forget is your time zone, your time frames, and your targets that you want to achieve. Okay. Now, calories you can work out in multiple different ways. We're going to go through that shortly, but you can go into a TDE calculator online. Any of those are fine. You can do the equation that we're going to use in a second when I show you that. But the main one is obviously this time frame. Okay. Now, this is the one thing that many guys forget about. All right. They think it's a case of, right, I'm just going to do a shred and just see how it goes. Okay. Now, the biggest thing what happens with that is if you don't have a time frame, you'll start seeing slow results and your motivation just dwindles away. If someone held a gun to your head and said, right, you're going to lose body fat, you would do it, right? So it's the same principle. If you set yourself a deadline and targets to achieve along the way, you're more likely to stick it out and actually see some decent results out of it. So whether that's 6, 8, 12, 16 weeks of a cut, for example, the longer you have, the better, because you can work in social events if you need to. But if you're wanting to do a little bit more rapid, then obviously the shorter time frame probably will work best, because you have to sacrifice those nights out a lot more and you really have to be dialed in and disciplined with your approach with your nutrition and things like that. For me, for example, I'm doing a 6-week cut until my holiday to Tenerife. So I know for the next 6 weeks, I have to be on it with my nutrition, my training, my sleep, cardio, steps, everything has to be on point. So that's the important thing to work out your time zone. This is why booking things like holidays, doing a photo shoot, people, potentially for doing a marathon, like people run, which I hate running, work best for them because they have a time frame and have something tangible that they're getting close towards, okay? Now you don't have to have a time frame. If you do just want to diet for 6 weeks, then fine. If you do want to do a diet for 12 weeks, then that's fine. You don't have to have something tangible in the end. But setting those key time frames is going to be really important to achieve. And then once you have set that time frame, you can then look at targets, what you want to achieve. What weight do you want to be by the end, for example, as a rough estimate. And looking at, then you can start setting your calories from that point. Then you can start setting how many steps you need to get, how much protein you need along those time frames, so that you're guaranteed to achieve that set result you've got imaged in your head by the end of that time frame. Now, once you've got your time frame set and your target set, then you can start looking at how many calories you need to eat in order to lose the body fat that you want to lose. Now, in terms of a healthy fat loss, if you're looking for a more rapid approach and really dial in your habits, around 1 kilo a week is sufficient. If you're looking for more of a steady rate of loss, then anywhere between a 0.5 and a 1 kilo loss on average per week is a good place to start. Now, excuse my 4-year-old handwriting and probably spelling, I'm dyslexic as fuck. But to start off with, this is kind of where we look at a client's calories. So you start off with taking your body weight and timesing that by 24, okay, for a male. Most of my followers are male. That's going to equal your BMR. So how many calories you need whilst you're in a coma. Once you then worked out your BMR, you then need to add on your activity levels. Now, the one thing where most lads go wrong with this is they're too generous with their activity level. Your activity levels encompasses how much time you spend in the gym, how much time you do cardio, your steps, your activity levels in work, activity levels outside of work. So if you're going to the gym, 3 to 4 times a week, you're maybe you've got a really active job, but then you're sat on your ass the rest of the day and the rest of the week, doing nothing on the weekends, mostly probably spending the time in a hangover if you're going out or partying every weekend, then you're probably going to be more in the lower end here. Now you can go between these numbers, but if you're quite sedentary and you generally don't do much activity, maybe you're perhaps new to the gym and things like that, then 1.1 is what you need to times it by. If you're really, if you're lightly active, so you maybe walking to and from work, you train in the gym a couple of times a week, but generally don't do anything much other than that, then maybe 1.3, 1.2 is going to be where you're at. If you're active, so you do more steps, you perhaps go to the gym a little more frequently, you move quite a lot throughout the day, then a 1.5, and very, very rarely have I had a client that is very active, okay? So that's being overly generous, but that would be someone that potentially is, a very high performance athlete, that sort of stuff. This is going to equal your maintenance calories, okay? Now, once you've got your maintenance calories, you can then start to work out how much rate of loss that you want to lose. Now, if you're one person that struggles with motivation, then a faster rate of loss is going to be better. Your body, generally we should spend more time in a gaining phase throughout the entire year and less time in diet. So if you can get the hard work done in and out really, really quickly, you'll be straight into gaining muscle as quick as you can. If you kind of faff about, take your time with things and be really lenient on things, then you are going to see a steady rate of loss, but then you need to equate your calories to that. But also your motivation is going to start dwindling away a lot quicker than someone potentially that's willing to make a little bit more sacrifices and willing to really prioritize the fat loss and get it over and done with so that they can really get into that gaining muscle and really change their physique like a lot of my clients have, okay? So if you're looking for rapid fat loss, maintenance calories minus 30 to 35%, okay? And that's basically the calories you need to be on. If you want more of a steady rate of loss and you're quite happy with just going steady for maybe a longer period of time, then maybe a 20 to 25% reduction in your calories is going to be sufficient. Now, you can interchange both of these. So if you've got a longer period of time and you're maybe doing a photo shoot prep or you're doing a show, for example, it's better off doing a faster, rapid rate of loss at the start because that's when you've got the most energy. If you're going to do a really slow, steady diet up until maybe a couple of weeks of doing your photo shoot, then do a rapid fat loss, your energy is starting to get dwindle away already. So you're going to really find it hard with your hunger, cravings that increase, your energy in the gym will be lower, your performance will start to drop. So it is better to go faster and you will maintain a lot more muscle because of it. Once you've then got your calories, you then need to work out your protein. Okay, now protein is anywhere between 1.8 grams to 2.53 grams per kilogram of your body weight. Okay, so normally around 2.2 to 2.5 is where I place clients at. But the main thing to remember with this is this will probably be a lot more than what you're currently having at the moment. Okay, so what you need to work out first of all, and a lot of the time what I do with my clients when they first start is we do a week of just tracking their calories. okay? Once you track your calories for a week and your protein and everything else and your macros, that's when you can be like, see how far you're away from it, okay? Now, if your calories calculate to 2,500 to lose weight and lose body fat, but you're only eating 1,900, then you need to reduce from that 1,900, okay? Because if you have that 2,500 and you're not losing weight yet, then you're gonna gain more weight, okay? You also need to look at your step levels, your training levels as well, and cardio as well, but mainly steps and training, okay? So if you're not, let's say you're doing 4K steps at the moment, then bump it up to 6K. If you're doing 6K, then bump it up to 8K. If you're doing 10 and so forth, all right? And then reduce it from there. The first diet you do will probably be, will be the worst diet you do because your calories are gonna be lower and your experience might be new to it, or it's something that maybe you haven't stuck out long enough to be able to see some decent results. We often have a lot more body fat to lose than you think, and often or not, most guys just lose 5 kilos because they don't have that time frame, and then they end up regaining that same 5 kilos back in their bulk. You want to rinse this diet phase as far as you can, so that you can set yourself up to that bulking phase and go straight into it for a really long time. Gain some decent weight back and muscle, and then be no more than 12 weeks away for being in shape again. And that way, you're going to maintain your level of physique for a much longer time and see much more incredible results from that. Now, once you've set your time frame and the dates in which you're going to be working towards, also planning in your social events in towards that time frame. So things that you've got actual tickets for, or events you really can't afford to miss. And you've tracked your calories per week, and now you know how many calories that you need to be on and how much protein you need to be on in order to lose as much body fat as possible in the quickest possible time, or in your time zone that you've allowed yourself. You now need to start getting more organized with how you structure your nutrition. The biggest thing that falters most lads in their steps is not getting organized. They use MyFitnessPal as a reactive tool. They eat all their food throughout the day, get to the end of the day, you're led in bed, scrolling through your phone, maybe watching Netflix, and you're then, how much oil did I put in fry my eggs in? How much malt loaf did I have? How much butter did I put on my toaster earlier? These small things are really gonna play a massive role in deciding whether you're actually in your calories or you're over your calories. So getting organized with those sorts of things, making sure you've always got food in the fridge, removing foods that are that temptation. Do not buy them. Buy foods that are going to be supportive of your goals. Buying the same foods every single week. The way I structure my nutrition at the moment is I literally have these same meals every single day. That yogurt, granola, dark chocolate and apple meal I have it every single day. Before I train, on rest days, on the weekends, I'll then have the same breakfast, the same third lunch of the day post-workout. The meal that changes the most, where I have a little bit more variety, however, is dinner. And that's where you can have a little bit more enjoyment in terms of what you're having. But in terms of that variety, it might be a case of you just change the seasoning every week. You might change the protein every week or every other day. So for example, I will sit down with my girlfriend or myself at the start of the week and plan out my food shop for the next 2 weeks. I'll go out and buy all of the protein that I need for my dinner, all of the vegetables that I need for my dinner, as I don't have any carbs for my dinner at the moment. And then I'll plan that in and making sure that that's in my MyFitnessPal first, because that's the thing that changes the most, and then work back from that. And it makes it easier when you have the majority of the foods the same for the short amount of time. Fat loss is supposed to be a short-term thing. It's not a forever thing. And if you're in a diet forever, then that sucks, okay? You wanna be, getting in and out, going straight into that building phase so you can enjoy more foods and maintain your results on higher foods. The second thing is making sure you have those meals planned, okay? Making sure they're planned into your calendar, when you're gonna eat them, what days you're gonna be eating them, making sure you prep your meals ahead of time so that if you are running ragged with work or you're just really busy one day, that you know exactly there's a meal in the fridge ready to go. The more organized and planned that you can be, your life will be 10 times easier. The third thing is making sure people around you are aware of what you're gonna be achieving. There's nothing worse when you're in an environment where someone doesn't know that you're trying to shred some fat for the summer and are leaving Haribos and biscuits and things on the table that are going to knock you in terms of your progress because the temptation is there. If it's in eyesight, it's highly likely that you're going to be nibbling on it or forgetting that you've nibbled on that when it comes to your tracking for the day. So make sure you tell people around you in your support network, in your family, that you're going to be doing this so that you can make sure that they can support you in whichever way you can, whether that is to stop buying the things that you're tempted to eat, whether that is to make sure they kick you up the ass if you're not going to the gym. And this leads me on to the final and very, very important tip, is get some damn accountability. As guys, we are very stubborn. We think that we can do it ourselves, and very quickly we realize we just fall off track every time. And then we get okay with the mediocre of losing the same 5 kilos every single cut that you do for the summer and regaining the same 5 kilos and end up still looking skinny fat all the time. If you have that accountability, whether that's for a friend that's doing the same thing as you, whether that's for a family member, whether that's for a coach, then you have someone there to report to every week, making sure that, they are kicking at the ass if you're not doing what you're supposed to do, if you're making excuses that you haven't got your steps in, if you're making excuses that you couldn't track your food one day. Accountability is such a strong tool in enabling you to stick with what you're trying to achieve.
Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Yeah, we ran out of patience. Boil up with the cold hard hatred. I can feel the vibration. Feet in the streets, it's a new sensation. I wanna break faces on the pavement. I wanna make greatness look complacent. Adrenaline awakened, I can taste it. We can make an impact, grab and then take it. Like a disease, bring them to their knees. No pain for their disease. Breathe just like a weed.
So that is full body pull session done. Tough session again today, purely because when I had my pre-workout meal, I ended up having to then go back upstairs into the gym and film some content because I completely fluffed my lines on some content that I'm posting next week about exercise redundancy. And I had to, literally one line made me basically had to film one whole section of the video again. So yeah, I was not particularly pleased, which meant then I got to the gym about 3 hours later after my pre-workout, which is not ideal. So I technically almost felt like I was doing the session fasted. So literally wanted to get in and get out of the session and just have my post-workout meal, which I've got behind me here. And yeah, it was good. I ended up pretty much maintaining reps. And this session normally is on a Sunday. So purely because I'm going to London tomorrow, and what it worked out is a lot of my vlogs is leg days. So I've moved this session deliberately today to show you guys a glimpse of what my full body pull session looks like, my second session of the week. And so it starts off with obviously a cable row. So I tend to do a top and back off set on this one. So I'm lifting a lot heavier than I normally have. When I compare it to when I was gaining last, it's definitely a lot heavier. So a set of 8 to 12 on the first one, and then 12 to 15 on the next. Then we moved into a lat pull down. Now I obviously in my gaining phase was prioritizing a lot more back growth, back and hamstrings. So these are the main two areas that I really try to double down on my technique. And obviously other areas too, like legs and chest. I'm still and shoulders, trying to prioritize still technique, but really trying to iron out why my back hasn't been progressing in other gaining phases that I've done by myself. So we've doubled down on the technique and things like that, and found kind of positions that I feel my lats in quite a lot, or at least know that they're working. So sometimes when you're getting a sensation in a muscle, it doesn't mean directly that you're training that to a true extent. What I mean by this is if you are going to do a single arm lat pull down and you crunched all on your side, like a massive craze was back in like, I don't know, sort of like 5 years ago, everyone was really kind of crunching over, getting that big alignment with their single arm pull downs, you're basically shortening your lat. So whatever you do is going to feel like you're contracting it a lot when actually you're not lengthening it. So what you want to do is sit up nice and tall if you're doing a single arm pull down, and keep your body upright and let your arm come across your body like so, and then come down. That way you're also lengthening it and shortening it. So sometimes if you're getting so much sensation in muscle, sometimes it doesn't mean that you're properly training it as best as you could do. So with the dual handle lat pull down, what I tend to used to do with this one is keep my chest up nice and high. What I'm doing now is keeping my chest collapsed. So it's actually like lengthening my lats around my rib cage a lot more as I stretch up to the top. Now, when you do a lat pull down, it's okay to get that extension of the shoulder up. Where most lads go wrong with this is they overstretch at the top. So what happens is they overstretch and their hand internally rotates, okay? And then it becomes, your shoulders locking out. You're then sitting upright rather than being leant back. And it's becoming more of like a shoulder exercise. So you have to kind of swing back and lock your shoulder to get back into position before you then even train your lats. So keep yourself fixed, chest in a neutral position, so slight flexion of the spine or curvature of the upper back. Stretch your shoulders up and then drive shoulder down, elbow down. And you should engage your lats pretty well. 2 hamstring exercises in this session compared to my other one in the other part of the week where I tend to just do a Romanian deadlift. So I've got a lying leg curl and a hip extension. Now the hip extension, I am lifting the all-time weight on this right now for my heaviest set. So I'm doing a 6 to 8 or 6 to 10 and then a 12 to 15 on this one. I'm lifting 42 kilos. Now it's a fucking mission to walk from one end of the gym to the other. And I could could use 2 dumbbells, but we don't have 11 kilo dumbbells. So I need to use a 42 kilo dumbbell. So I'm walking from literally one end of the gym, hugging this dumbbell all the way to the hip extension just to use it. I then have to take a rest because I'm knackered by the time I get there. So then I rest, do my set. But yeah, this is all-time strength, and I'm really getting a lot of growth out of this in terms of for my hamstrings. Now the reason why I put it on plates, and I have had questions like this on the past, is if you think of like a Romanian deadlift and a stiff leg deadlift, if you're doing a Romanian deadlift with quite a lot of your bent knees, that allows your hips to go back further, which makes it more glutes. If you're doing a stiff leg and your legs are a little bit straighter, you're getting a little bit more hamstrings. So because I'm running out of room anyway with a dumbbell, I'm raising it up to about 60 degrees, which makes it a little bit more like kind of stiff leg RDL mixture of combinations. So I'm getting a lot of hamstrings versus over my glutes, and I'm still getting my erectors involved as well, which is great. So it's a really good alternative to try if you've got a 45-degree hip extension. If you haven't, you can actually create one in a Smith machine. So put 2 dumbbells behind the Smith machine, a hip thrust pad on the bar, set it at your hip level, lock your ankles behind the dumbbells that are on the floor, and then you can fold over the bar basically and create a alternate version to a 45-degree hip extension or a 60-degree hip extension, whichever way you lean on it and stuff like that. Following on from that, I then trained rear delts, but I didn't record that because it's a fucking boring exercise and no one needs to see that. Likewise, I then had adductors, and no one needs to see me clamping my legs together, quite frankly. And then obviously moved into biceps to finish off the session. So in my pre-workout meal, and I'll tell you how I structure it in a second, we have 100 grams of oats, 60 grams of whey, and 1 apple. So the way I tend to structure my pre-workout meals and post-workout meals is I tend to have a lot of, literally my whole day of carbs pretty much in and around my workouts, because that's when I need to exert the most energy. Like I said in the last vlog, if I'm resting, I will tend to prioritize my carbs around when I need to have more cognition, more brain function in terms of editing or filming content, whatever it is. So I will have in my pre-workout, I tend to have the smaller amount of the two, and in my post-workout, I'll have the most, so that I can, refuel my glycogen so I don't feel as flagged. And that way then that will set me up to, feel a bit more energized after session and, give me some more satiety. Now I tend to alternate these meals around. So the last vlog, I said my yogurt was the wrong way around, so I should have had that last. Now, when I've literally strapped for time in my PT sessions, when I've got like 30-minute gap, my oats, I'm a perfectionist. I'm the oat king. So I will not have this at work because it takes me too long to make. So I will have my yogurt and granola with dark chocolate. Now with the dark chocolate, it's a little bit of fats, and that helps to slow down the digestion of your carbohydrates. Okay, so it means it's going to last a little bit longer going into your sessions if you time it correctly. With my oats, again, it's a slow digesting carb, so it's going to take a bit of time to break down, but equally it doesn't tend to matter too much. It's just these kind of 1% things that you can benefit from. But you'll notice on Instagram especially that I literally have this every single day, and like I've reiterated earlier, if you have the same foods every day, it makes your life 10 times easier. So I'm going to tuck into this, and then we're going to go through some key things that you need to be aware of going into a cut, that if you are, it means you can navigate them much better. So what you just seen there was my meal 3, 6 egg white omelette with 40 grams of cheese, 100 grams of ham, spinach, and half a bag of salad and a bit of Tommy K, because you can't have an omelette without ketchup, right? Or mayonnaise to a certain extent. Now this meal I normally tend to have in the mornings purely because it's pretty much 0 carbs, high in fats, high in protein, and I like to have that in the morning because I tend to have an energy crash if I do have some form of carbohydrates in the morning. Now, I tend to train clients up until about 1:30. So if I'm having some form of carbs in the morning, by the time it's digested and worn off and me lifting the plates for clients and things like that, not obviously doing it for them because that would be incredible for PT service. But in terms of just moving the plates and stuff, using up my energy, I'm gonna have a crash by 12 o'clock, and then I then start the gym. So I kind of wanna have basically sustained energy. So limited carbs in the morning so I can really maximize them around my training, which is where I would normally have my yogurt, granola, dark chocolate before I train, or my oats, depending on what I've got on the day. But the first thing you need to be aware of when it comes to your cuts and your shreds is that you're gonna be hungry. There's no way about it. At the end of the day, you're eating less food for a specific reason. And if you hear a coach says, oh, you're not gonna be hungry on a diet, they clearly haven't done one themselves. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't hungry at all. I've gone from 3,700 calories on my bulk to 2,300 calories on my cuts. And the first 2 days of that first week was terrible. My hunger was all over, my hunger was really, really high. I could have eaten literally anything in sight. But the way that you structure your food, like I said earlier in the video, the way you structure it, the way you organize your food, place your meal timings around when you're most hungry. So I tend to intermittent fast up until 10. I then have my omelet then, and then I then have my pre pre-workout around, an hour, 2 hours before I'm supposed to train so that I can really maximize it. But if I hadn't done that, I would be leaning into that hunger signaling. So just expect to be hungry and, make sure you are getting sufficient amount of protein in, timing those meals, being organized, and the hunger will get easier. The first week of a diet is always the hardest. And then it tends to get easier the more your body gets used to having the lower calories and the more volume foods and things like that, like salads and vegetables, which is what you've seen on my omelette. Ta-da! Shiny forehead or face, because I don't know where it stops and where it starts sometimes, to be fair. But now the second thing that I had to do in my diets and now is that I had to sacrifice nights out. I had to have a period of lack of balance, prioritizing my cut over nights out over gigs. Not always, you pick and choose which ones you go to. However, if you are going to go to one, you would have a set limit of drinks, or you would stick to your 0-calorie Diet Cokes, lemonades, that sort of thing, or take your own version of takeaways to make sure that this time frame that you set yourself from the very start gets hit, because you don't want to get to that end of the time frame and feel like you've just wasted your time. You might get to the end and think, really wish I didn't have as many takeaways as I did. I really wish I didn't have as many drinks as I have. You don't want that thought coming into your head. And that's something that I used a lot of the time in my photo shoot prep. I didn't want to get to that day, step in front of the camera and be like, I really wish I was leaner if just I didn't have that extra takeaway or didn't have that extra drink. That's the kind of mentality you need to do. Now, alongside the balance, favor to more fat loss, your diets, your shreds, your cuts. And I'm afraid to say it, but you're going to have to sacrifice your favorite foods at some point. There's a reason why they're your favorite foods, because you want more of them. You want to consume more of those meals. If you stuck to a more methodical, the same meals every single day and limited variety for the short term, you will get your results and more when you get to that end target date that you set yourself. If you consume more of those foods, you're more likely to go over your calories. That's then going to limit your rate of loss that you've maybe set yourself, whether it's more of a rapid fat loss, whether it's more of a steady fat loss. So limiting them for the short term and getting the job done means that when you do transition out, like when you have a limited amount of balance, when you reverse your calories out, you can start adding in those foods that you enjoy, those favorite meals, because they're going to become more of a nicety rather than just a have to have. If you drink beers more regularly every single weekend or every, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, every single week for a whole year, I can guarantee you'll start to not enjoy them. Whereas if you limit them for a short period of time, you remember, oh, I have this beer because I enjoy it every now and then, rather than just for the sake of having it. But by reversing your calories out, you do have more calories to play with, so you can enjoy more of those things. But the lack of balance and a little bit more strict with your diet is for the short term, and that's how you're going to get your results. Number 3, and something I experienced in my photo shoot prep towards the end, and I know that I will experience in this mini cut as well, is periods of feeling skinny. Your sleeves on your t-shirts not clenching your arms as tight. Your t-shirt's generally feeling baggy. At the end of the day, you're reducing your body fat over a prolonged period of time. So your clothes will start to feel a little bit more loose, and you will maybe perhaps start to feel that you want to give up, because that's where you feel skinny. You feel like, okay, I've maybe gone too far, I need to go into this bulk. But you need to ride this period through, and there's a reason for this. Because when you consume carbohydrates, they change into something called glycogen. That glycogen gets stored within your muscle tissue and gets used as energy, and it's the reason why your muscles feel so pumped in the gym and so full. But as you start dieting and your calories start getting lower, the carbohydrates is where the calories come from. So your carbs will come down gradually, and because of this means your muscles are getting less energy coming in, so they're going to start to feel less pumped, and they're going to start to feel more flat. And this is where the skinniness comes in, or that feeling of feeling skinny comes in to play. But the magic happens after your diet, because when you finish your diet, your body's super responsive to everything that you consume. So as you slowly transition your calories back up into a gaining phase or into a maintenance period, your body's going to take hold of that glycogen from all of the carbs that you're now transitioning back upwards to bring your calories back up. And this is where your muscles are going to start filling up, and this is where you're going to look twice as big when you're shredded, and how you're going to maintain your physique in that maintenance period, or even build more muscle upon it as your carbs get higher. So that's meal 4 wrapped up. Sweet and sour chicken with vegetables, which is actually becoming one of my favorite meals, to be fair. So I will definitely be buying that next week. Again, another meal with no carbs in. So like I said earlier, all my carbs are on my training, and some carbs will be coming from the source. So, don't be afraid to season things if you're having like bland meals like chicken and rice and things like that while you are cutting at the moment. Season it with sauces. If you batch make them, it's so low calorie that it's easy to work into things like ketchups, reduce salt, sugar, ketchups, whatever. Sauces, pasta sauces, seasonings for chicken, beef, that sort of stuff are really good to have to make sure to just add a bit of flavor to your food and things, because, having chicken and rice by itself is as bland as Gandhi's flip-flops. So I'm currently 5 days into week 2 and I am 1.7 kilos down in total. So I've only lost sort of around 0.5 this week. Weight's been very stubborn at the moment. So I went, up at the start of the week, held at a really high weight for 2 days, then dropped by quite a considerable amount and held that weight for again another 2 days so far. I'm away in London tomorrow, so I'm not gonna have a chance to weigh myself. Sunday will be the next time. So hopefully by then it should have come down. So I'll pop up on the screen what I look like at the start of my mini cut and what I'm looking at week 2 from today's post-pull sessions. So you can see from both the front relaxes and the lat spreads that my waist is coming in a lot tighter now. Even though I'm only 2 kilos in, my posing 100% better. It's getting better every single session. The more I practice it, the better. It's becoming more of a routine and more of a habit of where I'm placing my feet, where I'm putting pressure on my toes, that sort of stuff. More veins coming from my bicep, for example. Obviously more faces that look like I'm shitting. But yeah, generally there's a lot more leanness coming through and I'm only 2 kilos in. Now, admittedly, the lighting is slightly different, but you can clearly see there's a difference in terms of the waist size, in terms of my abdominals coming through, the vacuums coming through a lot better, and just generally like less body fat around my shoulders and biceps. If we then look at the rear lat spreads and the back double bicep poses, again, you can see from here that I've got more leanness coming through in my mid back. My lats are a lot sharper, and also my waist is coming in much tighter too after sort of 2 weeks in so far. And in the back double bicep, again, you can see my rectors are a little bit more on show. There are more striations coming through, and it's only 2 weeks in. So this is the benefit of getting lean before you bulk, because it enables you to hold a really good shape going into that bulk, so that when you next diet down or when you next need a mini cut, you don't have to diet for long periods of time. So you can go really short, sharp, like I'm doing at the moment, get in and get out, see where you've built the tissue to, and then get on building again. So I hope you found today's video valuable. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and join me on the next video, which will be week 3 of my mini cut, going through everything in terms of how to set up your training and everything I'm doing with my training at the moment.